This video is sponsored by CIRO Toys. What's up guys and welcome back to On The Brick, where you did hear that correctly. I have my first sponsored set. Recently, a company named CIRO Toys reached out to me asking if I would like to review one of their sets. I thought it looked really nice and they seemed reputable, so I went ahead and said yes. The only condition of course was that I mention it was free and give it an honest review. So this is what they sent me, B775 The Botanical Garden. Okay, to be perfectly clear here, this is not a set they designed. This actually comes from the user Brickpolis on Rebrickable. However, if you go to that listing, you'll notice that this seller has sold this design specifically to be reproduced by non-LEGO companies, including Mold King. So they say not to worry if you see someone using their design because it is okay. Several companies actually sell this, but let's see what CIRO has to offer. First is what you have to look at here. It is the actual box. Yeah, they sent the full thing, and that is in part because it did ship directly from America. The back of the box does show you several of the features and builds that you can have inside of this building, and I also want you to take note of this image that's included here. Keep how this looks in mind, because we are going to come back to this. You also get a printed instruction booklet, which is really nice. This is the same quality as the LEGO ones. It's the same style as the LEGO, so they don't gray out previous steps or anything like that. They're very readable. They tell you exactly where things need to go. All of that is pretty much exactly the same as LEGO. And another thing that's the same is that it comes in numbered bags. Yep, it comes in numbered bags that allow this process to be a lot easier and quicker for you. And while I personally think bag 3 should be split up into 2 bags, it was still a really nice thing to have. So with all of that said, here is the actual build. As some of you may know, I tend to like to do these big builds pretty much in one go. In fact, I picked this thing up in the morning and then just sat down and built it. 2100 pieces doesn't actually take that long, but there were some challenging moments that we'll go into, and I also took some breaks, but still, it only took a few hours to actually do. And by a few, I mean like 5 or 6. I actually had a lot of fun putting this together with very few problematic areas, and my girlfriend was even really excited when she saw that I got this and demanded that I keep sending her update pictures. This is a very unique modular building that does fit with the rest of them, but the original design of this thing does have some problems. Okay, so if you have ever built a modular, then you probably already know that it's usually a building or multiple buildings that has at least 2 or 3 floors in it with a bunch of rooms and whatnot. This is not that. This is a single building with a single floor and a lot going on inside of it. And in my opinion, probably a little too much. It is a botanical garden, so of course 99% of what's inside is flowers, a tree, stuff like that. The final design of this building does look wonderful, and it really does. I just can't help but think that the original designer should have cut down in some areas. For instance, I would love to be able to show you in a far easier way all the plants and everything that are actually inside of this build, but unfortunately it's just not designed like that. If this was a normal modular, this entire top section would be able to come out. But remember what I said about that image on the box? You can actually take this top floor off, but instead of being a single quick motion, it gets locked in place for some reason. And that's because of these pieces here. See, the front panel and this top area were always supposed to be 2 separate builds taken off separately, but they're not supposed to really lock into place like this, and I'm not sure why they do. I'm going to be completely honest here, this is the one part of this build that I had any major problems with that is not from the original designer. In the original instructions, it's not like this, and so I'm not entirely certain at all why this was changed. Now, if you want to fix it, it's pretty easy. You just have to take off these extra pieces here. Or when you're building this section, do make sure that you just follow the original instructions and it'll work out just fine. If you do it the way that I did with that small fix though, there is this tiny gap here. Again, you can fix that with like a simple brick or 2. And this is when I wish that I had a micro lens like Brick Me Up Scotty does, so I can give you a much better view of the inside than I can here. Because all you can see here is the top of this tree, which does look nice though. Thankfully, the entire first floor is pretty much open windows or open space. Like I said earlier, a lot of what is in there is just plants, so you can see different flowers and whatnot, but there is this like coffee machine here for the workers, which is a really nice touch. There's a sink, some drawers, several cups. It's actually a really nice mini build to put in here. And then obviously there's a bunch more flowers and whatnot, and you can kind of see the base of the tree in there. Also, it's hidden away under here, but there is actually a bench for your minifigures to sit on as well. Again, through this window, we have a bunch of flowers, which is a little tedious to put together, by the way, I'm not gonna lie, but it does make the end result look really good. This is actually the back door, but if you take a look inside, you do see that giant blossoming tree in the middle, which again is a very bright and well designed addition to this whole build. It really does pull everything together, even if it is just ever so slightly too big. On the other side, we have this fountain, which is a pretty simple build, but I do love how it looks. It actually does look really good. And you'll also notice that one of the lights inside fell. I just noticed that in editing. Next to that is this really lovely build that, again, I'm sorry that I can't get better shots of this for, but I think this is like a place that you get your flowers wrapped, if you know what I mean. I've never actually really gone to a place like this to get flowers, so I'm not entirely certain. But I am certain that that's a thing. So this is where you do that. I love the use of the clear pieces for this. It's actually a really clever build. Alright, there are some other downsides to talk about, for instance these lamps on the outside. You'll notice that one of them is missing here, and that's because as I was assembling it, it just broke. That's why there's a stub here. On the other side as well, you can see that some of these are not the black that they're supposed to be, and that's on me. As I was building this, I wasn't really paying attention to what pieces I was using, and accidentally used the wrong ones inside the build, meaning that I couldn't build these properly, so I just had to grab spares that I had. Eventually I'll switch these over to black to make it look nice. And that's actually the main chunk of this build. There's nothing really on the second floor or anything like that. It's really just the flowers and plants, but again, it's a botanical garden, what do you expect? Also, this does not come with minifigures, so here is a 332nd Trooper that I have to show you the scale of this. Like I said, it would fit pretty well in terms of size for your other modular buildings. With that said, there was one particular section in this build that a lot of people tend to have trouble with, and I was no exception to that. In fact, it took me more time to do this one section than it did to get to this section. And that, of course, is all these windows. Unfortunately, they're just not supported very well, and that's part of the original design. It took me so long to get all of these to be able to hold in place and get lined up, and on this side you can see that it still didn't really matter because most of them have just become loose anyway. And while I'm certain that is at least in part because of the bricks being used, like I said, this section was not changed from the original instructions, and there just isn't support here or anything. Also, at the point that you are putting these in, you have already placed all of the plants and that giant tree inside, so it's not like you can actually get your hands in there to be able to actually clutch these down or anything. I don't know if this would be possible, but having thought about this for a few days now, maybe each side of windows should be a submodel that is built to be strong and then all placed in at the same time, instead of one by one by one. It never got to the point of like absolute frustration, but it definitely is the more challenging part of this build that really could have been done better originally anyway. Now, before we get into the final and totally awesome part of this build, one other thing I wanted to point out is that the original designer actually has an alternative and extremely similar build, which is basically exactly this, just without the building. Yeah, he built a botanical garden, but just a park without all the walls and everything, and it actually works in that sense. In that sense, I can see all of this being how it is. Putting walls around it suddenly does make that a lot more challenging. But with all of that said, you have absolutely noticed the wires and everything that are sticking out of the back of this thing, so let's turn off the lights and look at the one additional function this build has. Yup. You can light it up, and it comes with the build. This is not an additional purchase or anything that CIRO sent me on their own account. This is part of the model that you get. The The instructions even tell you how and where to put the lights during your build. And of course you can choose not to, but if you don't and then want to, it's going to be a lot harder for you. On a quick side note, the reason that the lights keep flickering out is specifically because I'm moving this around to show you and everything. If you're just sitting this in your city or whatever, you're not going to have that issue at all. But I just love how these look. If you know anything about my modular city, you know that I have lit them up with my own custom lights, and this just looks so good to go with all of that. Every bit is lit up, it is very bright, and it just looks so good. When I look at this, it honestly brings warm and fuzzy feelings to me. It's like I'm walking downtown, passing by a flower shop, and it just looks so wonderful. My favorite part is actually the top here, with just how bright it really is. Obviously, not all the lights are actually lit up, for instance the lanterns outside aren't, which does kind of make it weird that they're there, but honestly it doesn't matter. So overall, I do think this is a worthwhile build. The only other thing that I do need to mention is that this is a little more expensive than getting it from some other companies. However, as I said, they do ship directly from America, which does really help. To clarify, at least they did for me, because at least then you're not waiting 2 or 3 months to get your build, and you're going to be waiting maybe a week or two. It does have some small problems, but nothing that like ruined the build or anything like that for me. It was still very doable. And besides, it's not like I'm opening up my modulars too much anyway. So if you are looking for a custom modular building or a unique modular building to add to your city, the link to their listing is in the description down below, and I'm sure they would appreciate it if you at least check them out. But I would like to know your thoughts on this in the comments down below. As always, I love seeing what you guys have to write. Please do remember to like and subscribe as well, or check out that Patreon if you really want to support me. And a huge thank you to CIRO Toys for sending me this wonderful set. And of course, a thank you to Jonathan and Project Elements for their continued support. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.